Great, so I think we'll get started, everyone. Welcome back. I hope everyone had some delicious lunch and you're all ready for another great couple of sessions. So we're moving into our first panel for today, and today's panel will be talking about blockchain. How does it democratise information and why is it good for customers? Both Axichain, in partnership with Western Union and Civic Ledger, are building next-generation marketplaces with blockchain technology to solve the problem of information asymmetry and trust. According to the CSIRO, the adoption of blockchain technology is sufficiently mature for production systems to be implemented. With expert moderation from Joni Pirovich, the panel will share stories of how blockchain technology democratises information and why this is good for customers. Our speakers on the panel today are Linda Woodford from Axichain, Sally O'Keefe from Western Union Business Solutions, and Katrina Donaghy from Civic Ledger. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you, and thanks to everybody for joining us today. We're going to hear from these three brilliant women from their own journeys on building these next-generation blockchain-based marketplaces. And I think that we'll start with Linda to tell the Axichain story, and then followed by Sally to comment on the Western Union perspective and why you wanted to be a part of that, and to cap off with Katrina on the Civic Ledger as well as the Water Ledger journey from the customer perspective and what really are we doing from the customer perspective when we're democratising access to information. So Linda, over to you.
Thanks, Joni. Hello, everybody, and I'm really excited to be here, so thanks for the opportunity to be here. So Axichain has digitised the red meat supply chain for export with a piece at the back end for the financial piece, which we've partnered with Western Union for the cash perspective, and we've used blockchain to underpin the process and allow for authentication of the data as it goes through that piece. So it's a big piece. So we've built an entire ecosystem from farm using a blockchain technology to authenticate the data, then through the legal system, which is the National Vendor Declaration, which all of our traceability hangs off the back of that, and then into the trade piece itself for domestic trade and international trade. And this is where Western Union come into that picture, which we're very excited to partner with, to help with the traceability, the transparency of the cash flow of that trade.
And it was something that we were really excited about because at Western Union we've got a big focus on the agribusiness space, and also arguably being one of the oldest technology companies. We're celebrating our 170th year this year at Western Union. It was just really exciting to be involved in the new technology that Linda and her team were focusing on, and to sort of see that you can have what Katrina refers to as analogue technology dealing with new streams of technology. And it is that payments piece. So from our perspective, we see it as two clients. Linda was our client on the Axichain front, so we were helping their client experience in terms of accessing the markets and being able to receive the payments from the offshore buyers of the meat, and then ultimately their end client, so whether it's the farmer making sure that the money gets back into his account for the cow that he's sold, and also the people offshore making that payment and just making that process as seamless as possible.
So essentially a escrow-style remittance payment process, which is transparent. So one of the biggest challenges in traditional processes in export is where does the money go for 5 days? You can't actually see it. And particularly using instruments like letters of credit, those types of banking instruments which are very old, 10 steps, 4 banks, slow, costly, poor FX rates, etc. So by partnering with someone like Western Union, it helps us deliver a better foreign exchange rate, all in one place and all transparent, traceable, and better for the customer.
Thank you. And what I'd like to draw out, and we'll come back to, is that this is a blockchain for solving the information asymmetry, one of those problems. and we don't have a blockchain implementation in this case that's involving a token or a cryptocurrency. This is a pure blockchain play for solving the information asymmetry. and we'll get onto that in a second. But before we go there, Katrina, please tell us a bit about your story.
My name is Katrina Donaghy. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Civic Ledger. So we've been around for a little while now. So feels like we're in year 30 now with our tech. We've seen a lot of changes in the landscape, and it's quite exciting that we sit here in 2021 and having a really diverse conversation about where this tech is going. But like Linda, we've always looked at how do we actually bring out more transparency around issued assets that are backed by a regulatory framework or by a market mechanism. So right back in our early days when we started working with this tech, we saw that there was a method to digitise an asset whereby everyone could agree on its value or its state or where it's come from and how that would actually change the way we operate in a market. So right back in our early days, we were fortunate enough to start playing around with water. And even though that was 2016 and we're now sitting in 2021, all of a sudden we're now seeing how water is a really strong, important piece of economics. So something that we sort of saw a long time ago. But the interesting thing is that even though we understand how water flows, using the metaphor, we use that a lot, but we actually see how it impacts on irrigators. And I'm not too sure if many people in this room have been following the ACCC inquiry into the Murray-Darling Basin Authority, but often the voice of the irrigator gets lost around politics. But when you actually engage with the irrigator or the person who owns the problem, they just want it to be solved. And I think there's also a mythology out there that farmers or people on the land just don't understand technology. So therefore, we can't talk about this tech with them. And that seems to be the position of government as well. You can't talk to irrigators about blockchain because how do they understand? And it's actually so untrue. And I guess this is where the synergy is between Axichain and Civic Ledger, is that we're actually dealing with people that deal or own or move real-world assets that actually underpin our economies. And to actually understand this technology and embrace it is really encouraging for us, because for many years we've been told that we're the difficult middle kids, that we're working with a technology that nobody quite understands, and isn't it that crypto stuff? But when you are truly solving problems for people that own the problem, it becomes a revelation. And I think one of the highlights that we had this year is after delivering a pilot up in Maribyrnong, which is Joni's town, up on the Atherton Tablelands, which is just a beautiful part of the world, when I saw one of our customers doing our presentation without me even being there, and it got posted around, I got sent to it on my mobile, I kind of went, you know what? This makes me happy that all the work we've done, and I can have a person from the land who owns this problem can stand up and knowingly talk about how we're solving this problem and how we're bringing value. And that's something that I have to hold on to, because doing this journey with blockchain is hard work. But if you actually remember why you are here, who you're solving the problem for, and how you're actually creating value, it actually keeps you going, because we go through challenges where government tell us that we are too hard, or it shouldn't be used, or it's that crypto thing. But what we are truly solving is how do we create a rational market, so we're removing that compliance burden where it's the person who are in the markets have to continually prove that they're not breaking the law. And we see court case after court case after court case where the onus of proof is put back to the problem holder of this asset, and that's, I guess, where this technology becomes really, really powerful.
Yeah, which we are also using for data-backed asset lending, which we're about to roll out shortly. So having that sort of holistic view of the product or the animal on site, and then evidence of that animal, and then that data then obviously always goes right through the supply chain, right out the other end into a box and overseas.
And I can sort of subscribe to that, because I was involved in the pilot before Christmas, where we ordered some beef cuts, and you could scan the QR code and there was a picture of the little cow in Cooey wrap, I think mine was from. So that provenance piece, which is in the ag space, a lot of people are focusing on, but I actually like that Linda's piece is really on the process improvement, which is helping the customer in that way.
Yeah, we had a bunch of customers say, I could just about see what the cow ate. It wasn't quite that much detail, but it was close.
We might get to that
Great.
point. Well, Sally, talk to us more, because coming from the Western Union perspective, you know, other institutions have got to educate their senior stakeholders about what blockchain is and how that is and is not part of other digital asset networks. You've got a senior executive team and product team that have been monitoring the space already. Can you talk us through what that process was like for you, having an already educated team of stakeholders?
It actually made things a lot simpler. We didn't have to say this isn't crypto, which comes up a lot. There were some other people in the organisation that thought that we were solving for the payments to be made in crypto. But from the blockchain perspective, given our product team, they're across various technologies, whether they're specifically related to us or not. So they had a lot of background in it and understood the value that Linda's team were bringing to the market and how we could fit in, even though it wasn't the blockchain aspect from our side, but how our technology fits with blockchain and what we can do to add to that process. And as you said, we monitor. So our guys, and it's not a case of let's just find something and throw some money at it and help develop it. It's that whole solution base that Katrina mentioned. There's got to be a problem that needs solving, and particularly in the ag space, as you said, they don't want things thrown at them. They need to know that there's a problem that is understood that they have and that someone's trying to solve it for them.
And I think one of the things because we have come from a government perspective and things like that, and we've collaborated with government on solving problems, but they tend to want to solve their own internal problems and build their own internal systems, but they don't really want to actually interoperate out with the industry to who their customers are. And that's where we get the disconnect, because then the burden is pushed back to the industry to be compliant with government systems that don't seem to understand how things work. But your piece around the whole idea of interoperability is often a mythology as well. It's like, well, blockchain doesn't actually interoperate with anything else and you've got to replace all these systems. And I think, again, that's a mythology that we've really got to get over.
Yeah, definitely. And we're using it in other discussions that we're having with other fintech companies as well. So it's going to be really useful from us in that respect to help add value to our clients, again, in a different sense.
And Sally, for the institutions in the audience, what does that monitoring look like and that education? Are you privy to that?
Not directly, but having spoken to our senior product executive in Denver, he's like me. It's a lot of just seeing what's going on in the press, getting along to conferences like this, speaking to other participants in the market and learning that way. I don't know about
partnering.
you guys. It is, and it's partnering. Yeah. And I'm now in the channel partnerships team. So I previously was in the agricultural sales side, but now really understanding more that relationship of partnering with people. And I was in a session here just before lunch, and it really is that collaboration side of things, that buy versus build, but all work together with people and focus on your key criteria that you can manage.
And one of the reasons we chose Western Union was because of their global stance. Because obviously working with individual banks is quite difficult for onboarding, particularly for export and onboarding buyers in other countries, because they need to be able to onboard in another country. And the Western Union's platform or reach and compliance, which they've spent a lot of money on,
Compliance is massive.
is enormous. And so being able to layer across that and partner with Western Union for that cash piece, and then being able to authenticate that process and have it transparent for all the users and in a safe environment for the buyer to put the money into. It's a very good collaboration. So we have the really old and the really new.
Exactly, and that breadth, like we're in 200 countries, we cover over 130 currencies, and on the compliance front, from I think it was 2014 to 2018, we spent over $1 billion in compliance. So for Western Union as a whole group, compliance is massive.
Well, and we just had the roundtable before about the national blockchain roadmaps focus, and there's a whole RegTech working group to see how blockchain as a technology can be used to help solve some of those compliance issues. And at least for the problems or the solutions that Axichain is bringing to the red meat industry, what's been your insights from the beef producers as to how it's easing their workload and the amount of paperwork that they're having to deal with?
Well, I think they like to get paid. So, and being able to see the money on its way. And so we've built our system so that it's all transparent And it just makes that whole piece, because what we're doing, so with red meat, it's quite a complex process, but there's 3 areas of where the farmer can actually get out of that supply chain, or they can hold the product the whole way through. So we've built it in a way so they have choice, depending on their risk appetite of that supply chain. But for them, mostly it's about seeing the money coming in and the feedback around not so much the payment piece, but the data that comes back from the abattoir, because that helps them build a better product. And so having that sort of complete feedback loop of information to the producer is gold, because then they know if they need to tweak a feeding program or something like that. So that information in a sort of full circle. So it's not just about the money itself, it's actually also about the information coming back to help them build a better product.
And so let's switch gears a bit and talk about funding to bring your projects to life. So we've got a clear example of a partnership with Western Union and Axichain, but in this case I might start with Katrina. If you can talk to us about what's been successful for you in getting funding into Civic Ledger and Water Ledger.
I think one of our key breakthroughs was when oh God, it's so long ago now, feels forever ago, but I was able to engage, I was introduced to a key irrigator up in Atherton, Tablelands, up in Far North Queensland. And because he actually saw what we were actually trying to achieve and he knew the problem so well, we found that he then became our advocate. Even though we had engaged with government, and we've been to Paris so many times because Joni and I have been there together. We'd actually been known globally for the work we
For the Blockchain Policy Forum, not for a holiday.
Yeah.
Shopping trip.
But it wasn't until we actually got Joe on our side that he became, it sounds bizarre, but he became the trusted source. So even though we were talking with because I'm from Queensland, even though we're talking with our government departments and our regulators and the operators, and we were on panels and we were featured in AFR and all that sort of stuff, it wasn't until Joe came along that he basically just said, this is what we want, this is how we want to get it done. So through his engagement and trust in us, we were able to get the confidence of what we call I don't know if anyone in this room understands the cooperative research centres in this world, in Australia. We have a number of CRCs that are looking at different verticals. Anyway, we have one up in the north of Queensland called Developing Northern Australia. And if anyone is understanding or has knowledge of Northern Australia, just put your eyes across it, because there is so much activity going around developing Northern Australia as our next food bowls and things like that. So because Joe had the confidence in us, we got the backing of the CRC for Developing Northern Australia, and they brought us through the process to co-fund a world first pilot up in Reba Taboola. Now we got government on side, but we had to say to them, it's not going to cost you anything, because as soon as we say to them, we'd like you to, have some skin in the game, then the doors close. They go, no, it's not our problem. But we do all of this work, we work with the irrigators, solve the problem, do all our research, present the evidence, and then they change their leadership roles, they move on, and then you get somebody new in the job, and then they go, no, I don't like blockchain. We're not going to support this project. And that's what we go through consistently. We go through a process where we get evidence and proof, and we get things happening, people change in the roles, and then all of a sudden we have to re-educate all over again. Grants are hard, funding is hard.
So we need more Western Union skilled.
No, but it is...
Skilled senior executives.
Yeah. But it does come down to collaboration. But I guess one of the things that, and I don't want to speak on behalf of Axichain, but the blockchain industry, we have to carry a lot. We're the ones who turn up to the panels, do the discovery papers, do the roadmaps, do the education, not get paid, not get paid, not get paid. And then we do these world-changing projects, and still it's a case of, I don't know if blockchain's the right technology that we want to work with. So
there's still a tension as well. Like there's the commercial use cases which can be brought to bear with partnerships, with commercial partnerships, but where the technology is a common technology infrastructure of which government is a key party to that, we still don't have established models for public-private partnerships in the use of that common technology infrastructure. No. So you're right.
And it's hard because we have to then break the ground. we're constantly breaking the ground to sort of see how those partnerships work, how the governance works, and then there's a question around IP. And particularly Civic Ledger, we work with open source. So it's really important that we have open source, that we have developer tools, that we build ecosystems, that applications can be built on our tech. So we're not going to sit there and put our arms across our technology and say nobody can have it, because that's the value processes that we go through. And then that butts up against, what do you mean you know, where's your IP? And it's like, well, we build with open source. So it's complicated.
Well, I do come from Ariba. I've been at the wrong end of the channel, the very end of the channel, where another farmer up the road has used up more of its water entitlement and there's none left for us. So there is a clear use case for better information and real-time information about the flow of water in our water markets. Even if it just helps me have a shower at the end of the day as a farmer. Yeah. Part of the reason I moved to Melbourne is to become a lawyer and not a farmer because of all of the issues that I saw my parents and my grandparents go through. So I'm glad that some of them are being solved. But Linda and Sally, from this Axichain project and talking to the farmers, I mean, yes, there's the education of them, but there's also the roadmap of what this opens up for them and their businesses and their own financial well-being and health. Can you talk to us about some of those conversations that you're having?
So one of the reasons why Australian Wagyu Association wanted to partner with Axichain was because when a farmer lists their product into our system, it's a little bit like the Airbnb of livestock. So you can sort of see it all on the map. And it allows a couple of things. It gives that farmer more exposure that they're there, and whether they're, you know, they have 20 cows or 2,000 sheep or whatever it might be, that allows the purchaser, like the abattoir or someone down the supply chain, to see where their stock is. But more than that, one of the challenges with livestock is that there's many blockages along the way. So it allows for us as a company to then digitally syndicate smaller users together, which wouldn't normally know that they exist. So you could have, you know, Joe down the road who might have 20 cows, and you've got John up the other end of the road and Betty around the corner, and they've all got a similar spec product, but they might not know each other. And so we can digitally syndicate those guys together, so then they can reach further down the supply chain, which is really exciting. And that's why we had 50 Wagyu producers join us in 3 days, 2 weeks ago, at the Australian Wagyu Association, which gives us access or line of sight to 70,000 head of Wagyu. Now, that's really exciting, and those guys are really excited to be working with us because they can see that it's not shuttered off anymore. They can actually see in collaboration. So it's like building millions of little co-ops.
And almost empowering the small family farmers, which, as most of you may or may not appreciate, one of the major threats to the family farmers is the big agribusiness schemes, which can have the scale to bring fruit and produce to market more quickly, more affordably, but yet the family farmers have that care and the dedication for the better quality, but often they don't get paid the premium prices for the quality because the produce or the fruit is brought to market later.
And it gets lost in the system. So we have a number of guys that are producing amazing, trust me, I've eaten some of it, it's delicious, 9+ marble score Wagyu. But it gets lost in the pricing mechanism with the average. And so by what we're doing is actually allowing more understanding of market value right down to the specification, which is really exciting. So yeah, and the numbers in droves in 3 days to join us was evidence of that.
And I guess what we're looking at is a market where there is no price. In our Australian water markets, price does not actually feature. Now, you'd imagine if you were a person who was on eBay looking for your product and you're looking for a price guide, imagine if there was none. What would you do? Now, that is something that our irrigators go through every day because they don't know the value of their water. So as a result, our water often doesn't go into an allocation market because irrigators just don't know, they're not confident in how much they should be putting their water on the market for. And our operators, our regulators, are not collecting price through their information systems. So as a result, we actually don't know how much water we have in this country, yet it underpins our economies. And I guess those are the reasons why blockchain technology matters, and this is why we're doing it, is because if we're able to produce information in real time that enable a rational market to emerge, such as real-time price, history, ownership, issuance, we actually are able to bring confidence into the market so water is actually used efficiently. And that's where we have a massive problem in this country. Water is not used efficiently. And these are the reasons why we build with this technology. And also it democratises the market. Because like food, we do have big corporates that are actually able to pay people to work in the market to find out where that water is, whereas the smaller irrigators don't, so they opt out.
And so, but those big corporates, we spoke to a couple of them last week at Beef Week, or the week before, and they're all using paper-based systems. We couldn't believe it, paper-based systems.
Excel.
There's so much loss in paper-based systems, it's incredible.
It's like, put the Excel down. Stop using Excel.
Now, with a few minutes to go, I will just ask the audience to raise the hand if there are any questions. I think we've got one in the front here if there's a microphone. I'll go to the man in the grey shirt first. And then Lawrence.
Thanks, Joni. Hayden from NAD Ventures. So, Linda, great pitch last night.
Thank you.
Katrina, you mentioned that interoperability is a methodology. So I'm curious, both Linda and Sally then, are you just using the data that's coming from Axichain and making business decisions based off that? So there is no integration with...
No, there is integration.
So if you could say a bit more, as much as you can, obviously, about that then, in the sense that, because obviously interoperability is a massive challenge at the moment, so then what does that kind of look like from a technology perspective? Because in order to grow and scale, integration within corporations obviously needs to be easy and, one click effectively. So how is that being managed?
You want to go? Or you want me to go? Okay.
You go.
Okay, so yeah, we have integrated. So it's not just an API from one place to the other. So there has been some development on both sides to talk to each other about a sort of effectively a wallet system. And so when the money comes in, there's some trigger points that we at Axichain from the smart contract piece then triggered to Western Union on movement and visual of that funds. And then those funds are triggered to be moved to where it needs to go through our settlement engine into the buyer or whatever cost it needs.
Or whatever, so it's covered across all the different people that need to receive that payment.
Yeah, so there is integration there.
We had to take a bit of a different approach. When we were actually working up in Far North Queensland, we had two different information systems from a government perspective, one from the operator, one from the regulator. They actually have their own very old systems that don't interoperate at all. What we found the problem was to get over, what we found was the first instance was that they couldn't agree on identity. So the data pieces about taxonomy or standards is one of the most fundamental places to start, because you have to get consensus on what identity actually is so it can actually move through systems and we don't lose sight of it. So that's where we have to start. So it's not about interoperability in the first instance of thinking tech. It's about interoperability through data. What data do we actually require? What do we agree on? What's the definition? What's important? What do we need to share? How do we use that? It's all of those are the conversations that we have to have. Then writing the smart contracts that then trigger events. And then the APIs between how data can be moved together. But it does take time to solve it, but I don't think it's unsolvable.
Thank you. And Lawrence, quickly.
Just a comment really. I guess tuna is very tradable. Tuna fishing rights, southern bluefin tuna, and I wonder if there's some developments in that space that you're aware of.
We did some work around seafood early on actually, around lobster, crayfish. Definitely seafood is on our radar. We're not just cows. we can do honey, nuts, chicken, grain, whatever you want to call it. The engine itself, it doesn't matter what's being pushed into the front, but we have obviously a lot of stuff around cows, but yeah.
On that note, I might have to wrap up, Katrina, but we will be available. Thank you to Sally, Linda and Katrina for their time today on the panel and for all of you joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, everyone.